Today, I will be going through the full silly season update from the beginning of the season all the way up to now. Let's go and just jump straight into it. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We're going to first start off with Denny Hamlin, and we're going to go all the way back to early February in the season, as Denny Hamlin was the first driver to make a move in the silly season, as he was signed a multi-year contract extension with Joe Gibbs Racing. It's very unclear how long he will be driving with Joe Gibbs Racing for the foreseeable future, as there have been potential talks of Denny Hamlin leaving the organization, maybe go over to 23XI Racing, and FedEx also extended as well. However, FedEx will not be fully sponsoring with Joe Gibbs Racing as well for the foreseeable future, as OfferPad has stepped up to sponsor Denny Hamlin over the last couple of years. I believe it's at least a 2 or 3 year extension with Joe Gibbs Racing, but we'll have to see what happens. Then, about a week before the Daytona 500 took the green flag, Martin Truex Jr. signed a contract extension with Joe Gibbs Racing. It's believed to be for the 2022 season. The terms were not entirely disclosed, but it is believed that Martin Truex Jr. is most likely going to be a free agent at the conclusion of the 2022 season. So it's very likely that Martin Truex Jr. could be leaving the team at the end of this next year, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Then, right after that, we're going to talk about Junior Motorsports, as there was talks about Junior Motorsports potentially looking to jump up to the Cup Series in 2022. But unfortunately, because of the cost of all the charters in NASCAR right now, if the charters potentially being up to $10 million, Junior Motorsports basically decided they were not going to be jumping up to the Cup Series in 2022. However, it does look like there's a very strong possibility and a very strong chance that we see Junior Motorsports potentially jumping up to the Cup Series in 2023. They may be able to get the funding by that particular point, and we may see Junior Motorsports jump up to the Cup Series by 2023. Right after that, we're going to talk about GMS Racing. Now, GMS Racing in late June, it'd be a little bit for silly season, pick up a little bit more, but GMS Racing in late June would make a massive announcement, and they would announce that they'd be racing in the Cup Series in 2022. Very recently, GMS disclosed, and president of GMS Racing, Mike Beam, disclosed that they are planning to run full-time in 2022, and currently at the moment, Ty Dillon is the most likely favorite to go to the organization in 2022. It's unclear when this announcement is going to come out for Ty Dillon to go with the team, but a lot of industry insiders have said that Ty Dillon is a current favorite to go to GMS Racing, and this announcement could be coming in the coming days. Ty Dillon's also expected to be testing the next-gen car with GMS Racing. They will be at the next-gen test coming up very, very soon. So it looks like Ty Dillon will be going to GMS Racing, and they're expected to run full-time, as they're expected to have acquired a charter for next year. Now we're going to also go on to talk about Alex Bowman. Now, rumors started circulating about Alex Bowman's future, and a lot of people circulated that he maybe end up going to 23XI Racing. But then, starting in late April, after he won at Richmond, president of Hendrick Motorsports, I can't remember who basically said, but there were reports starting to come up, and Alex Bowman started saying that he was expected to return to Hendrick Motorsports and sign a contract extension with Hendrick Motorsports for 2 years. And in late June, on the weekend of Nashville, Alex Bowman announced that he has signed a 2-year contract extension with Hendrick Motorsports through the 2023 season. Of course, this is coming off of a 3-win season for Alex Bowman so far. He's been very solid so far. He absolutely deserves his contract extension. He'll be driving for this team for the next couple of years. Unfortunately, he's kind of on the verge of getting eliminated from the playoffs at the moment. But with 3 wins so far this year, those coming at Richmond, coming at Pocono, and coming at Dover this year, it absolutely makes a ton of sense for Alex Bowman to return to Hendrick Motorsports. On the same weekend, we would see a very big bombshell silly season move happen. Kaulig Racing would announce that they would be going to have acquired 2 charters for 2022. They were expected to jump up to the Cup Series in 2022. They had announced that in early May, but in late June, they announced they'd be going to have 2 charters for 2022. Justin Haley will be driving the car full-time in 2022 in the number 16 car. It's unclear what the decision on the other car is going to be. We are expecting A.J. Allmendinger to drive at least potentially up to 10 races in 2022, but it's unclear if this car will be full-time with one single driver, and they may run a 3rd car next year, or if the 2nd car is going to be on a part-time basis. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but we will see Justin Haley drive the 16 car full-time in 2022 in the 16. Because of this, at this time when this was announced, it was revealed that Spire Motorsports at the time will be downsizing to a 1-car operation for 2022. This was at the time, I believe. We'll talk about Spire Motorsports as time goes on into the silly season update. But at the time, they were announcing they would be downsizing. They had taken the charter from Trackhouse Racing, and they would be taking it and giving it to Corey LaJoie, who would be returning to Spire Motorsports for 2022. It made a lot of sense at the time to just keep Corey LaJoie in the organization. Corey LaJoie was starting to really improve as season has gone on, so it made a lot of sense to keep Corey LaJoie in the organization. Then, in early July, it was officially reported and confirmed that Jeff Gordon would be leaving the Fox Sports booth and he would become the vice chairman at Hendrick Motorsports starting in 2022. Now, Jeff Gordon's already been working with Hendrick Motorsports for a very, very long time. He had an ownership stake with the team all the way starting back in 1999 when he started owning his own organization of Jeff Gordon Motorsports. So it made a ton of sense for Jeff Gordon to be able to work with Hendrick Motorsports going into the foreseeable future and be working as vice chairman. Eventually, he will become the main guy who runs Hendrick, since he's going to be the second in command of Hendrick Motorsports at this given moment. It's big for Hendrick Motorsports to have a guy like Jeff Gordon work with them. It'll be big for the organization going forward. Then, a few weeks later, it was revealed that Todd Gordon will be retiring from crew chiefing at the end of the 2021 season. Todd Gordon had been a crew chief in the Cup Series since, I believe, 2013 when he started working with Joey Logano. He worked with Joey Logano up until 2019. Then in 2020, Todd Gordon moved from working with Joey Logano down to working with Ryan Blaney for the 2020 season. And then after the end of this year, after Ryan Blaney's best year, he's won 3 races so far. He basically will not be crew chiefing at the end of next year. Now, Ryan Blaney does have a crew chief for next year, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. But Todd Gordon absolutely deserves the right to retire. Todd Gordon's had a very successful career. He's won a championship in 2018 with Joey Logano, so he absolutely deserves, in my opinion, to go out and retire at the end of this year. Then it was revealed a few weeks later, not too much later, that Trackhouse Racing, and this is the big bombshell, this is probably the biggest bombshell at the time, and probably the biggest bombshell of the year, the most shocking news story that we've heard so far in 2021, that Trackhouse Racing had purchased Chip Ganassi Racing's NASCAR operations, and they had acquired boat charters for the organization. At the time, the 99 car was expected to be driven by Daniel Suarez once again. They hadn't announced their second driver at the time, but at the time, it was believed that Kurt Busch and Ross Chastain were the 2 most likely drivers to take that second opportunity. It was believed that the charters were worth $10 million each for the organization, though it was believed that Trackhouse spent a ton more money, of course, with Pitbull's ownership stake part of that team. Pitbull's bringing a lot of money, and Justin Marks is bringing in a lot of money as well. This is going to be big for Trackhouse Racing. They're buying into one of the most successful IndyCar teams. The team had decent success in NASCAR, not winning a championship, but winning many races with drivers like Sterling Marlin and Kyle Larson. They were able to have very, very solid success throughout the time. This is really, really shocking, but I think it was going to be really big for Trackhouse as they expanded their 2-car operation. They had talked about going to become a 2-car operation for the foreseeable future, but it was big to see Trackhouse make their expansions. Right after that, a few weeks later in the middle of July, it was announced that Kyle Larson has signed a contract extension through 2023 with Hendrick Motorsports. Now, his contract had already only gone through the 2022 season, but he will basically sign an extension through 2023 at Hendrick Motorsports. And the big thing for Kyle Larson is that he will be fully sponsored by HendrickCars.com for a majority of those races through 2023. Now, Valvoline will also sponsor him for a few races. Cincinnati Incorporated will be sponsoring for a few races during that given time. But Kyle Larson has signed that extension through 2023. I think it makes a lot of sense considering Kyle Larson's arguably been the best driver in the Cup Series so far in 2021. It makes a lot of sense to keep Kyle Larson through the 2022 season. I think it's going to be big for this team overall as a whole, and I think it's going to be great for Kyle Larson. Then Hendrick Motorsports basically revealed that they were working on massive contract extensions for not only Chase Elliott, but for William Byron as well. Chase Elliott, William, I've heard some things about Chase Elliott potentially maybe getting a little bit equity and ownership stake, maybe in a team in the foreseeable future. It's unclear what's going on in regards to Hendrick Motorsports going into 2022 and what their plans are going to be for next year. But both of them are expected to sign major extensions. They both do have contracts through 2022. At this foreseeable moment, but it's believed that both of them will get contract extensions, massive contract extensions, considering William Byron has had his best season so far in the Cup Series here, and Chase Elliott is a champion for Hendrick Motorsports. It makes a lot of sense to keep both of them or organizations. It is believed that both of them will keep going and working with the team. Then on the next day, it was revealed that Austin Cindric will be moving to the 2-car for Team Penske in 2022. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this makes sense for Austin Cindric to be working with Team Penske on a full-time basis in 2022. Number one, he's son with Tim Cindric, who's basically the competition director and basically the president of Team Penske. Of course, he works in the IndyCar programs, but he is the president of Team Penske at this given moment. And the other reason is Austin Cindric is coming off of winning an Xfinity Series championship in 2020, and he's still currently the favorite to win win the NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship in 2021. The other big reason is that he's a really good road course racer, and NASCAR's been heading in more of a direction of bringing road courses on the schedule. I think Austin could next year become the first rookie in many, many years, since probably Chris Buescher in 2016, to win a race in his rookie season. I would not be entirely shocked if that would happen going into 2022. I think he's a very solid road course racer, and I think he's going to bring a lot to the table next year. On that same day, about an hour after, it was revealed, and this was shocking too, that Harrison Burton will be moving over to drive the number 21 for Wood Brothers Racing in 2022 with Dex Imaging as a sponsor. It was being rumored early in the week, and it was rumored on the Door Bumper Clear podcast that this was expected to happen. Now, a lot of people at the beginning, including myself, were a little bit confused why Harrison Burton was going to be taking that 21 over a driver like Matt DiBenedetto. But if you look at the sponsorship that he has Dex Imaging, which they have not only sponsored Harrison Burton in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, but they've also sponsored a Team Penske cars, also Matt DiBenedetto, and they sponsored Ryan Blaney this year so far. So it made a ton of sense for them to bring Harrison Burton in the organization for next year. Plus, Harrison Burton is part of KHI management, with Humberto Pizza sponsoring Harrison Burton at certain points. And I do think in the foreseeable future, Harrison Burton could move over to SHR on a long-term basis. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that if that does happen. But Harrison Burton will be driving for Wood Brothers in 2022. A few days later, it was finally revealed, one of the biggest silly season rumors that have been sparkling. Brad Keselowski was officially going to become the co-owner / driver of Roush Racing in 2022. He will be taking over for Ryan Newman going into 2022, driving the 6 car. He will have a minority ownership stake going into the team in 2022. As time goes on and the longer he's with this organization, the more ownership stake he's going to get into this team, as eventually he should be able to take a full ownership stake going into the foreseeable future. Now, Brad Keselowski his contract's basically forever. He'll be with the team for a very, very long time. A lot of people are wondering why this deal was basically happening at that given moment, and the reason this deal is happening is, look, we're going into the next-gen era, and Brad Keselowski won an ownership stake at Team Penske. He wanted a longer contract with the team. He was supposed to test the next-gen car on the day the next-gen car was officially revealed, but Ryan Blaney took over for him at that next-gen test. And he had feud with Joey Logano, and he wanted to get out of that toxic environment. So it made a lot of sense. Plus, if you look at previous ownership stakes, Tony Stewart actually was around the age that Brad Keselowski was, and that's when Tony Stewart decided to make a move to become an owner of his own organization. It became very, very successful. I'm not expecting Brad Keselowski to overnight become a championship caliber driver as a team. I think he has a chance to win races going in the next year. He could win the Daytona 500 or win a super speed race for all we know. But I think that Brad Keselowski moving this team makes a lot of sense. Then a little bit later, it was revealed that Taylor Gray is expected to run on a partial Truck Series schedule in 2022. Now, Taylor Gray going into next year is only going to be 17 years old, and he was supposed to run a much longer schedule in 2021, but got involved in a motorcycle accident early in the year. So it's unclear how many races he will run. It'll probably be a schedule very similar to what he's run in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, well, in the Truck Series so far. He'll probably, in the foreseeable future, then go full-time with DJR Racing in 2023 when he does officially turn 18 years old, because again, he's only going to be 17 going into next year. I expect Taylor Gray to be pretty decent. He's had a couple ARCA West wins so far in 2021, and I think he'll be very solid going into next year. And then on that same day, it was revealed that Trackhouse Racing has had discussions about potentially running the Indianapolis 500. This came out of nowhere, to be perfectly honest with you. It's unclear what team they will basically work with. It's unclear if they're going to be their own organization going into next year, or if they are going to work on a partnership with a team like Chip Ganassi Racing, or if they're going to remain in the Honda, or if they're going to work with Honda. I'm not sure if they'll work with Chip Ganassi Racing, or if they'll stay in the Chevy camp. Maybe they'll work with Team Penske going in next year and run a 4 Team Penske car. It's very unclear at the moment, but they've talked about making some really big moves as an organization going into the foreseeable future. It'd be really cool to see Trackhouse Racing maybe run the Indianapolis 500. We've also seen Rickworth Racing make deep dives into IndyCar, and they've had an association with Dale Coyne Racing, and they had Romain Grosjean this year, who of course is going to be going to Andretti Autosport going next year. Maybe this is where Jimmy Johnson goes if he's able to pass his RLP test. He's gone through phase 1 today, so hopefully we'll see that happen in the foreseeable future, and maybe we'll see Trackhouse run. Speaking of which, a couple days later, it was officially revealed that Ross Chastain would be going to Trackhouse Racing in 2022, driving the 1 car. Ross Chastain absolutely deserves the opportunity to drive the one car, in my honest opinion. I think it was very solid so far. And when he got over to Trackhouse Racing at the time, Ross Chastain was having a really good stretch of races, really good runs on road course tracks. And I do think that working with two drivers really developed. Plus, Justin Marks is a really, really big fan of Ross Chastain. Now, it is believed that Ross Chastain is really not bringing any funding, and they're basically going to be helping him out, of course, with some of the sponsorship they have going into next year. They'll probably be able to sponsor him with some of the sponsors that Daniel Suarez, in the cars that Daniel Suarez was not able to run. I would assume that he will probably potentially work with the same crew chiefs that he worked with and the same crew that he worked with in 2022. It's basically the same team he's working with, just with a new brand. But he'll be working with Justin Marks, who he has a pretty good friendship with overall. He worked with him in the past when he drove for Stacey Comp's organization, where Justin Marks was trying to make a mark in NASCAR. So we'll see Ross Chastain at Trackhouse. A few days later, Aric Almirola was speaking to the media, and he said that he had a multi-year contract with SHR and was expecting to return to SHR in 2022. Of course, during that week, Aric Almirola was able to pick up a very surprising and shocking win and pretty much had the best car at the end of the event and picked up a win at New Hampshire, was able to make the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Now, a lot of the speculation on Aric Almirola was because Aric Almirola up to this point was having his worst NASCAR Cup Series season to date. Now, a lot of people don't talk about that at this given moment after that win in New Hampshire, but he was really not having a very good year with only 2 or 3 top 5s and a couple top 10s coming into this season. After a pretty solid 2020 season, he was coming into 2021 not really having a lot of good year. Of course, a lot of bad luck and not a lot of good cars. Really unfortunately affected Aric Almirola's opportunity to be really, really competitive. But I think, of course, having that Smithfield funding is going to help out Aric Almirola. He will be returning to the team next year. Then, about a day or two later, Hailie Deegan was speaking to Adam Stern, and she says that she was hoping to run some Xfinity Series races in 2022, and she will continue running full-time in the Truck Series in 2022, hoping to continue running full-time Truck Series in 2022. I think Hailie Deegan going up to Xfinity on a part-time basis would definitely make a lot of sense for him. I think that she'd be a very, very solid driver for Xfinity. I think she'd actually perform a little better in Xfinity than she would in the Truck Series. I do think the DGR trucks are really not that great. I do think that they have been improving as time has gone on. I do think it helps that they've gotten some better experience. Guys like Chad Johnson working as a crew chief for Aric Almirola. I think it definitely makes a lot of sense. Not Aric Almirola, Hailie Deegan, excuse me. It makes a lot of sense to bring a guy like Chad Johnson to the organization. We'll see what happens. I wonder what team she'll work for. Maybe Team Penske on a part-time basis. We don't really know what's going on with Team Penske Xfinity Series program going into the future. But we'll probably see Hailie Deegan maybe in the Xfinity Series in the foreseeable future. Then, during the National Weekend, when NASCAR making its return to the Watkins Glen in National Weekend, Rickard Racing basically talked about how their potential plans are for the Cup Series. And at first, Rickard said they were looking to have maybe 2 Cup cars for 2022. And Cody Ware, who's the son of Rickard, reiterated that, said the planning to run for 2 Cup Series teams for 2022, as they want to become a much more competitive organization, or be a little more competitive, trying to run in the top 20 and top 15 on a given basis. I think Rickard is making a lot more sense, making a lot of sense in regards, especially since they've been expanding into different motorsports over the last couple years. I think they're making a lot of sense trying to do that. I think it makes a lot of sense they're planning to downsize a 2-car operation. I think it's good overall for the organization. Then, during the weekend of the Indianapolis Road Course, or during the Watkins Glen weekend, there started to be some reports, and this has been one of the biggest talking points over the last couple weeks, about a potential merger between 23XI Racing and Front Row Motorsports, about a potential merger. The talks going on right now is that Front Row Motorsports may be selling one of their charters to 23XI Racing while they remain in the Cup Series in 2022. It is believed that they will be selling the charter to a driver that we'll talk about going into next year, and they'll keep one car going into next year, which means Anthony Alfredo is very likely to be out of their organization going into next year. So that is what is expected going forward for this merger. This merger definitely makes a lot of sense to be one competitive car, and they are believed potentially to be switching to Toyota next year. This is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on going forward, but this has been the big story going into silly season over time, and it's expected that this is going to happen. About a week or two later, it was starting to be rumored, and it basically was confirmed, that Josh Berry would be driving a car full-time for Junior Motorsports in 2022. He does have some sponsorship coming in for the team. He's got some pretty big deals. He's got one sponsor, I think, for 13 races and another sponsor for 7 races. Josh Berry absolutely deserves it. He's been really performing really well over the last couple years. He's been really performing well. He's gotten 2 wins so far in the Xfinity Series so far. One of those coming at Martinsville, picking up his first one on the short track, and also picking up his second win earlier this year at Las Vegas, substituting for Michael Annett. Makes a lot of sense, put him in full-time. He's a really good driver, and he absolutely deserves to be in this car full-time going into next year. Then, about a day or two later, Carson Hocevar revealed that he'd be returning to GMS Motorsports on a full-time basis in the number 42 truck in 2022. I absolutely think Carson Hocevar absolutely deserves to be going in this 42 truck once again full-time. GMS Motorsports has had a down year so far for the Truck Series program, but they have been absolutely improving, at least for sure, on his side of things. He's in the renovating the Truck Series Plus. He's been certainly competitive at certain points, and just being 18 years old and performing as good as he has, he absolutely deserves the opportunity, and he will be returned to GMS Motorsports on a full-time basis going into 2022. Then, during the Indianapolis Road Course weekend, it was revealed that Jesse Iwuji will be forming an Xfinity Series team for 2022 with Emmitt Smith backing him, and it will be called Jesse Iwuji Motorsports. It's unclear what their driver lineup is going to be, if Jesse Iwuji is going to be driving the organization, or if it's just going to be multiple different drivers who maybe have some good opportunities. And if what manufacturer was not announced at the time, it could be Ford or Toyota, Chevy. Going into next year, it's very unclear what the manufacturer is going to be for this team, but we're going to see Jesse Iwuji form a new organization going into next year. I think it's great for the organization. Then, during the Indianapolis Road Course weekend, right before the green flag basically dropped, Erik Jones revealed that he'd be returning to Richard Petty Motorsports in 2022, driving the 43 car. There have been potential rumors that Richard Petty Motorsports was potentially going to be switching over to Toyota after they've been with Chevy for the last 3 years, but those talks pretty much died down, and I think that's one reason why that he will be returning to the organization next year. I think it absolutely makes a lot of sense to keep Erik Jones in the organization. I think he's been really, really solid so far throughout his NASCAR Cup Series career. I know that this year has not been as good of a year. I think he's gotten 3 or 4 top 10s so far with Richard Petty Motorsports. I do think they've had a little bit of a down year so far just because of the fact that they lost a lot of their funding, and I do think that that funding has unfortunately affected them. They've been kind of back on that week-by-week basis when it comes to their sponsorship. So I do think it makes a lot of sense to keep him in the organization. He's been very solid, and I do think that this team could be a very solid organization going into the foreseeable future. Then, a few days later, during the Brian Clausen 39 Nationals, there started to be some potential rumors and some interest about Kyle Larson potentially maybe running the Indy 500, and Kyle Larson absolutely agrees. He says that he's interested in running the Indianapolis 500, but he did say he has to be a really good ride, and it has to be a good car for him to run going into next year. Now, Roger Penske did say during basically the BC 39 Nationals with Kyle Larson when he says, I think there's a certain driver that we need to go after, and there's been talk that the potential 4th car could be opening up for the Indy 500, and the schedules for next year for Cup do look very, very solid. So we could next year see not only Jimmy Johnson run the Indianapolis 500, but we could see Kyle Larson potentially run a 4th Team Penske car. We know Team Penske is only going to have 3 full-time cars next year, but we do know that Team Penske is probably going to run a 4th car next year. So it'd be really, really cool to see Kyle Larson get an opportunity. And I think that Kyle Larson potentially could run the Indianapolis 500 next year. This is IndyCar silly season news as well, but it's potential that we could see Kyle Larson run the Indy 500 next year. Then about a week later, we got official confirmation that Jack Wood will be going full-time with GMS Racing in the Truck Series full-time for the organization in 2022, driving a 24 car. It makes a lot of sense. Jack Wood does bring a little bit of funding, plus he's been part of the Chevy development program, the Driver's Edge program for the last couple of years. He's been driving for GMS's ARCA program over the last couple of years, and I do absolutely think it makes a lot of sense to bring Jack Wood full-time into the organization next year. I know he's not been entirely that great so far in their Truck Series program this year, but I do think with a little bit of development, I do think that Jack will be a very, very solid driver. He'll be driving for the team full-time next year. On Friday, I think it's August 26th or August 27th, it was finally revealed after much speculation and anticipation, Kurt Busch was officially finally announced that he would be going to 2311 Racing full-time in 2022, driving the 45 car with Monster Energy expected to back him for a majority of the season. There have been rumors really all the way starting back at the Coca-Cola 600 weekend that Kurt Busch was expected to be driving for this team full-time starting 2022. Now, it is a multi-year contract with the team. It's unclear how long this team he'll be working with them. I would assume it's for at least 2 to 3 years. But this will probably be the final team that Kurt Busch will be racing with. He'll be teaming up with Bubba Wallace. I think it makes a lot of sense to bring Kurt Busch in. One is big for the Toyota camp. Of course, he's going to be working with his brother Kyle, and he's going to be a good mentor for Bubba Wallace. I think Bubba Wallace has needed mentorship and guidance for a long time, and I think bringing Kurt Busch into the organization as a big part of it is going to be big for the organization, and I think it's great for the team. Look at Kurt Busch. He's a championship caliber driver. It doesn't matter what team Kurt Busch has gone to. He's been able to really evaluate their team and make their team really, really good over time. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and we'll be seeing Kurt Busch go to this team next year. I think it's great. We're also going to see the numbers move forward next year, but Kurt Busch will be driving for 2311 full-time next year in 2022. Right after that, we started hearing some big rumors, and Ty Gibbs is expected to go full-time in 2022. It's unclear what team will be running for, but it's believed, and this should be no surprise, Ty Gibbs will be driving for Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity in 2022. It's unclear the number, but we believe that he'll be driving an 18-car full-time next year with Joe Gibbs Racing in 2022. Ty Gibbs has been a rock star in Xfinity so far this year. He scored 3 wins in the 54 car, those wins coming at the Daytona Road Course in his first career start, those coming at Charlotte, and also winning his final race in 2022 so far at Watkins Glen. 2 road course wins so far. He's been extremely solid in Xfinity, and he will be driving full-time with Joe Gibbs Racing. I absolutely think it makes a lot of sense for him. Right after that, out of the week after, I believe, was Daytona, Tommy Joe Barnes and Cesar Baccarella announced that they had formed a partnership with Alpha Prime Racing in 2022. Tommy Joe Barnes basically was reeled back, I think, in June, that he was scaling back to on a part-time basis as a driver. He wanted to work more and focus on being an owner. And he said he would be only running 10 to 15 races, including running one of the Darlington races, I believe running one of the Daytona races as well. It was also revealed that Roger Group would be running at least 3 races on a part-time basis in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, while he was expected to run full-time and go for the Rookie of the Year honors in 2023. Wishing the best luck to this team. I think this team could be very, very successful. I think that Tommy Joe will run pretty well. I'm not sure about Cesar Baccarella, but I think it makes a lot of sense to work at the ownership side of things. It'll be great for the team overall. Then it was revealed on that same day, and Nick Sanchez and Roger Groove will be returning to the team full-time for Rev Racing in 2022 in ARCA. Nick Sanchez has been a standout in ARCA this year. I think he's been the best driver besides Corey Heim and Ty Gibbs. I think he's been the best driver. He's been running a majority of races this year. He's been generally really, really clean on the racetrack, and I think it makes a lot of sense to keep him. Roger Griff going full-time with Rev Racing makes a lot of sense. I think Roger's a very, very talented driver. He just picked up his first career podium, finished third with the Rev Racing organization. And the fact that they're going to be focused on both their drivers once again, I think it's going to be great, and it'll be great development for both drivers. They will both continue driving for Rev Racing going into next year. Then it was revealed, I believe, the next week that Noah Gragson would be returning to Junior Motorsports in 2022, driving the number 9 car. There have been some questions about Noah Gragson's future because his performances had not been really, really good. But Noah Gragson really started picking up a lot of performances, and his consistency have been really good. It had been consistent so much to the point that Noah Gragson's worst finish had only been about, I think, a 13th or 14th. He only had one finish outside the top 10 going into that weekend. So it makes a ton of sense to keep Noah Gragson in the organization. Plus, he brings a lot of funding and a lot of sponsorship. And he was the next puzzle piece to return to the team. Plus, he's got a good personality for the sport. He will return to Junior Motorsports going into next year. And then a few days later, JT Doherty Racing revealed that they would be downsizing to a 1-car operation for 2022. They had not announced their driver lineup at the time. However, it is believed that at this time that Ryan Preece will not be returning to the organization in 2022, as that car is an unchartered car. They'd be focusing on their only car with the charter that does bring funding. They will only have 1 car going into next year, and we will talk about the driver who will be driving that car going into next year. And then on that same evening, there have been some rumors starting in regards to StarCom Racing's future. And then Chris Stein, who works at Captain, who basically runs a Captain account, basically revealed that StarCom Racing has sold their charter for 2022, and they had apparently sold it to Spire Motorsports. Now, both teams currently at the moment have not really come out and said anything in regards to these rumors, but it is believed that they have sold their charter to that organization for 2022. I think it makes a lot of sense for StarCom Racing to get out. I think Spire Motorsports wants to be a team that wants to be really, really competitive. And StarCom Racing, ever since they lost Landon Castle, they have not been a really good team. Now, at the time, they had announced what their plans are if they're going to run part-time. They had not announced it at that time or what the team was planning to do. And we'll get into StarCom here in just a bit. But we will probably see StarCom Racing charter go over to Spire Motorsports. And then, early in the week, of the next week, Beer Motorsports revealed they would be returning in 2022 with their 62 car. They kind of give us a diagram of what their next-gen car is going to look like. And they'll be running all the super speed races, both the Daytona races, including a 10th run, the Daytona 500. And they'd be both running both of the Talladega races for 2022 as well. There have been some speculation about their future, but the widow, the wife, is currently running the organization at the moment after Mark Beard Sr. had unfortunately passed away, and she is running the organization at this given moment. Now, it's unclear who the driver is going to be. I would anticipate Noah Gragson will probably run on a part-time basis with the team. It's great to see that Beard Motorsports is going to run on a part-time basis with this organization. I think it's great for the organization. And then later in the week, on the Wednesday or Thursday of that week, Colby Howard announced he'd be driving for McAnally Racing in 2022 in the Truck Series on a full-time basis. I think Colby Howard's getting a very, very solid opportunity. I look at Derek Kraus this year and last year. Yes, Derek Kraus has not been a driver that's been really, he's had a lot of wrecks this year and has caused a lot of problems in the Truck Series this year. But I do think that Derek Kraus, when he's run well, he's run well. And last year, remember, they almost made the playoffs with Derek Kraus last year. So I think he's got a good opportunity. They're going to probably run 2-car trucks next year. I think it's going to be great for the organization to have Colby Howard in there to learn. He's been very solid when he's driven for the 19 for CR7 Motorsports. And he's had some decent runs with JD Motorsports. I also do think, though, that JD Motorsports is not a good organization. I do think that they're holding back Colby Howard's true potential. I think he's going to be great for there. Speaking of which, Derek Kraus is also expected to return to McAnally Racing in 2022 with a 19 car. Of course, Derek Kraus does have that Napa Auto Parts sponsorship, so I do think that really helps him and will keep him running. Plus, he's been part of the TRD development program for a long time, so I do think it makes a ton of sense to keep Derek Kraus continue to run the organization going into next year. And I do think he will improve as he's coming into his 21st year. He will be able to improve as a driver in his third full-time Truck Series season. And then there started to be some reports in regards to Morgan Shepherd and their future. He says he hopes to bring back Shepherd Ventures Racing in 2022, but he right now currently is looking for funding to fund that organization going into next year. Shepherd Racing Ventures has not really raced for the last year because practice qualifying has not been around. It's expected that practice qualifying for Xfinity will be probably around in some aspects going into next year. And I would assume that it's probably going to be a driver that is bringing a lot of funding and a lot of sponsorship going into next year. But it's really cool to see this Shepherd Racing Ventures is going to potentially come back next year. It would be really cool to see that team come back. And then later in the next week, Sheldon Creed revealed that he would officially be leaving GMS Racing's Truck Series program, and he would be jumping up to Richard Childress Racing's Xfinity Series program for 2022. Numbers and sponsorship have not been revealed at this given moment. He probably will be taking over the 2-car going into next year, the 21. But Sheldon Creed moving up to Xfinity to drive full-time for Richard Childress Racing's Xfinity Series program in 2022. Makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you. Sheldon Creed's been very solid in the Truck Series over the last couple of years. He's been saying for the last few months that he really wanted to jump up to Xfinity, and it finally got revealed in the middle of September that he would be officially driving for Rich Childress Racing Xfinity Series program. He's a very good driver. He absolutely 100% deserves to go to this team. I think he'll absolutely be a championship contender. I think he will for sure be better than My Sider's been this year, and I think he'll be really great. And depending on who his teammate is going into next year, I think that Sheldon Creed will be a great driver next year in Xfinity. And then on the same day, about an hour or two later, Justin Allgaier was announced he'd be returning to Junior Motorsports in 2022, driving the 7-car. Now, of course, he does bring some funding. He has Brandt basically backing him. And, of course, Kelly Earnhardt Miller, who basically is on the board of directors for Brandt, he has been working with the team. There have been a few questions about his future, but, of course, Justin Allgaier has been a championship contender every single year that he's ran. So it makes a lot of sense to keep Justin Allgaier in the organization. He will return to the 7-car full-time in Xfinity in 2022. And then, I think the next day, Charlie Langdon signed at the time. Now the post got taken down, but he basically confirmed that StarCom Racing and all the employees at StarCom had been informed that StarCom Racing would be ceasing operations at the conclusion of 2021, and they will, like I said, be selling their charter to Spire Motorsports for 2022. Makes a lot of sense. StarCom Racing has been kind of falling off. It does suck that a smaller team. There are good people that work at the team. Charlie Lynch is signed. There's solid YouTubers and big fans. Michael Cozy Jr. There's great people that do work at that organization. People like Derek Koch and his wife do really, really good job. It's just a shame that they have not put the performances in their organization, which sucks. But it is what it is. This is another team that's probably going to be shutting down. But the charter is going to be going to a very solid organization. And then silly season would actually get a little bit quiet for the little bit of time. But Jeb Burton basically talked about his future in NASCAR, and he said because of Nutrient Ag basically dropping a sponsorship with Kaulig Racing, he says that his future in NASCAR currently is uncertain at the moment. It's unclear what team he's going to be going to next year, but there's a very strong possibility and a very strong chance that he would not be returning to Kaulig Racing going into next year and probably end up getting replaced by a separate driver. I do think Jeb Burns is a pretty decent driver. I don't think he's absolutely a great driver. He does have one win in Xfinity coming there, but let's be honest, he's not been as good a performer as people have said he's been. I think he's getting beaten regular season points by Riley Herbst right now. He's not been that great. I think he's been the worst performing driver at Kaulig Racing this year. It's unclear what his future is going to be going into next year, but there is a chance that he'd be leaving Kaulig Racing at the conclusion of this year. And then later in the week on Friday, Stephen Parsons revealed that he'd be driving full-time for BG McLeod Motorsports for the 2022 season. Stephen Parsons has been very solid so far at BG McLeod in the NASCAR Xfinity Series over the last couple of years. Plus, he does have funding for Sokol Digital, so it makes a lot of sense to keep him in the organization. He will continue driving for this team. I don't know how he'll do going in next year with this organization, but he will continue driving for the organization next year. Great to see that he'll continue driving. Right after that, we started hearing some teasers in regards to Kaulig Racing after the Truck Series race at Las Vegas, and Daniel Hemric revealed that he would be driving for Kaulig Racing full-time in 2022 in the 11 car. Sponsorship had not been revealed, but he will be replacing Justin Haley, and Bobby Bank is expected to go into the team. There have been a lot of people that have been very skeptical about this move in Daniel Hemric going to the 11 car next year. And the reason is I want people to pump the brakes just a little bit because I do think that Daniel Hemric is a good driver. And if you actually take a look at the regular season championship, if we did have regular season points in 2018 and no playoffs, Daniel Hemric actually would have won the NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship in 2018. So I think it entirely makes a ton of sense for Daniel Hemric to drive this 11 car next year. I think he's going to be a great driver for the team. He'll drive the 11 car full-time next year. And then early this past week, or last week, it was revealed that Team Penske had made some crew chief changes going into next year. Now, Paul Wolfe will remain with Joe Logano going into next year, and Jerry Bones will be working with Austin Cindric next year. But Jonathan Hassler, who works with Matt DiBenedetto, will be the crew chief right now and going into next year for Ryan Blaney next year. Jonathan Hassler is part of the Team Penske Corporation. He started taking over from Matt DiBenedetto in the second half of the season. I think it was really too late to put him in. But Jonathan Hassler started working Matt DiBenedetto around the time the All-Star race came around, and Matt DiBenedetto's performance has been much better. I do think that Jonathan Hassler has been the big reason why he's been performing a lot better. And I think that Ryan Blaney has a great crew chief going into next year. He'll work with Jonathan Hassler going forward. And then last week, it was revealed that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will be returning to JT Doherty Racing in 2022 in the number 47 car. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has been pretty good so far in the Cup Series this year. I think he absolutely deserves to come back. I know a lot of people have given him the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. moniker, but let's be pretty honest with ourselves. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is a pretty solid driver. He absolutely deserves it. I think ever since he left Roush, he's been improving. And I do think that, of course, with the funding, I do think that helps. He will continue driving for the team. I think he'll be a great driver going into next year. And then late last week on Friday around 4:30 at Talladega at the Freight Auctions booth, Grant Enfinger was officially revealed that he'd be driving a 23 for GMS Racing's truck program going from 2022 to 2023 with Champions Power Equipment working with them. You got a championship caliber driver in the Truck Series for this team. What else can you say? It's a great acquisition for GMS. He got basically kind of screwed out of ThorSport running full-time after basically being their best driver, making the championship 4 and winning 4 races with the team. They kind of screwed him over and took him out of running on a full-time basis in their truck program. He ran on a halfway basis with Christian Eckes on a part-time basis, which we might talk about Christian Eckes here in just a second. But Grant Enfinger will basically be a driver for the team full-time. Brings the funding, great driver, veteran experience, which is one thing that GMS is lacking right now. That's one thing they're currently lacking at the moment. And then later in the week, GMS truck team and Mike Beam came and talked about, we talked about here a little earlier about Ty Dillon. But GMS's truck team and their futures are really certain. First thing, Chase Purdy. Chase Purdy, you all thought is potentially going to be returning to the team next year. His sponsors and partners have not confirmed that they're going to be back next year. Zane Smith, same thing. I do think that Zane Smith potentially be moving up to Xfinity Series next year, but Zane Smith's future is uncertain. Tyler Ankrum, same thing. Lee Yuan, who's been sponsoring Tyler Ankrum for the last couple of years, is unclear if they're going to be returning to the team next year. And Rafael Sard, on his Twitter bio, he put out that GMS Racing is still in that Twitter bio and also on his Instagram bio as well. I do think that it looks like Zane Smith and Tyler Ankrum will probably move on from the team. I think Chase Purdy's partners will work with them next year and return to the team, unfortunately. And I think Rafael Sard will make a comeback with GMS next year. I think that's what's going to happen with GMS. And then the next day, right before the Truck Series race began, Austin Hill was officially revealed that he would not be returning to a Tory Racing's Truck Series team in 2022 and plans to move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Now, it's unclear where Austin Hill is going to be going next year, but he will be now returning to the team. Austin Hill has been very solid in Truck Series so far. I think he deserves to have a really good ride in Xfinity. He's been really good regardless of what ride he's been in. I think Austin Hill will be a great acquisition to any team going into next year. I mean, he won a lot of races the last couple years with a Tory. I know he did not make it to the round of 8 this year in trucks, which got eliminated in the first round with Todd Gillen. But I do think that Austin Hill will be a great acquisition for any team going into next year. And then on Sunday evening, we had a couple reports in regards to Aric. First one, Corey Heim. Corey Heim is expected to jump up to the Truck Series full-time in 2022. I do have speculation for this. I do think that Corey Heim is going to end up either driving 16 for a Tory Racing's truck program, or he's going to end up driving a 4 in place for John Nemechek, who I think John Nemechek is going to move up to Xfinity full-time with Joe Gibbs Racing next year. Corey Heim has been the best ARCA driver that's not named Ty Gibbs. He's been really, really good this year. He's been extremely solid, and I think he deserves the opportunity to get promoted going into next year. I think he's going to be a great acquisition for any team, regardless. I think he's a great young driver who has a lot of talent. And also, speaking of which, Roger Carruth. Now, it's unclear if this got mixed up or something with other thing talking about their Xfinity Series program, but if this is true, there is potential that Roger Carruth could be running on a partial Truck Series schedule in 2022. Unclear what team, but we may see Roger Carruth run on a part-time basis. Roger Carruth running in the Truck Series and some of the starts he's not able to run. I think it's going to be a great experience for him overall as a whole, and I think it will make him a much better driver. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but there is a very strong possibility that Roger Carruth may be running on a part-time basis in the Truck Series as well. And then a couple of nights ago, right after the Cup Series race concluded, where Bubba Wallace picked up his first Cup Series victory, it was a rumor started popping up from Tony Donnie, who I think works at the Indy Star. A rumor is Tony Stewart might be refunding a partial time ride for him to run in the Xfinity Series, Marco Andretti in the Xfinity Series for 2022. Now, back a few months ago, Marco Andretti did say that he's been looking to potentially run in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2021. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But now it looks like he's been shifting that focus over to running in the Xfinity Series on a part-time basis next year in 2022. I like to see Marco Andretti race in Xfinity. I think it'd be great for the sport, and we may see him run next year. And then we had a couple silly season reports that came out today. First one, Michael Annett announcing he'd be unfortunately retiring from full-time competition in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022. Basically retiring at the conclusion of the season from full-time basis. Now, a lot of speculation around that. I'm going to be doing much more full video in regards to that here coming up really, really soon. The reason is because of his injury. Michael Annett's been fighting an injury and basically had surgery not too long ago to recover from that injury. He tried to come back and run a few races, but agitated that surgery that took place, and unfortunately re-agitated the pain out of that. So Michael Annett will be retiring full-time competition. He may run part-time next year, but he'll be basically retiring full-time competition. And finally, before we jump into some speculations, Brett Griffin announced on the Door Bumper Curve podcast tonight that he will be spotting for Daniel Hemric full-time in the Xfinity Series, and he'll be spotting for Justin Haley in the Cup Series. After a very short retirement, after retiring full-time spotting in 2020, after working with Clint Boyer, he announced he'd be retiring, coming back out of retirement to be spotting for both those drivers. Makes a ton of sense. Brett Griffin, I think, is a really good spotter. I know he's very controversial on the Door Bumper Curve podcast, but still, I think Brett Griffin's a great acquisition for the team to work with. He's been working with Kaulig Racing and spotted for Jeb Burton recently at Bristol. And I think he's also worked with some other drivers in the Cup Series and part-time at Cup as well. So it makes a lot of sense. Brett Griffin is coming out of retirement. And now we're going to jump into all the speculations. And there's only 3 drivers that we really don't know about their futures. First one is Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman's future is currently unknown at the moment. Now, Ryan Newman is not going to be returning to Roush Fenway Racing in 2022. He potentially could go part-time with Roush Fenway Racing next year, but I do think that Ryan Newman's future is very, very uncertain at the moment. We never know. This could be the final season we see Ryan Newman race. These last few races running in 2021, the final 5 races this year, could be the final 5 races we see Ryan Newman race. However, I don't think so. I think Ryan Newman is going to run part-time with Roush Fenway Racing next year. I think that he'll run the 29 car for Roush Fenway Racing if that number does become available going into next year, and he'll do it on a part-time basis. I think Ryan Newman absolutely going to the scene would make a ton of sense on a part-time basis, and also would be a good mentor for Brad Keselowski to work with him, since Brad Keselowski is a little bit younger than him. It'd be great for Ryan Newman to work with a team, and maybe in the future, go inside the organization. Next team we're going to talk about is Ryan Preece. Now, Ryan Preece is now returning to JT Doherty Racing going into 2022. And there is some speculation around Ryan Preece going into next year. Ryan Preece could go to Spire Motorsports Cup Series program in their second car. He definitely would be a great acquisition. Plus, he did work with JT Doherty Racing, and they lost their second charter, and that got brought back into the Spire Motorsports camp for 2021. So I think it'd be a great acquisition right there. Xfinity, he has a couple potential spots. He could go to Richard Childress Racing's Xfinity Series program next year. They also do have a big announcement coming from that organization this upcoming week. It's unclear what the plans are for that, but that could be the case. Or he can go to SHR's Xfinity Series program if that right does open up. But there's also potential couple Truck Series rights that could be open. The main one is DGR Racing. He actually picked up his first career Truck Series win for DGR Racing earlier this year at National in his first career Truck Series start. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but Ryan Preece's future continues to be unknown. And finally, Matt DiBenedetto. We have been really wanting to know what's going on with Matt DiBenedetto, and I've been asked a lot about Matt DiBenedetto. I really don't know anything in regards to Matt DiBenedetto, and Matt DiBenedetto basically said the same thing. Recently on Series 7 NASCAR Radio, he said that his future is really unknown, and he basically has no update in regards to any update time something opens. Unfortunately, those doors unfortunately close for Matt DiBenedetto to get an opportunity to run with the organization. Of course, he will not be returning to Wood Brothers next year, and basically Roger Penske had called him out about it the same day that Brad announced he'd be going to Roush. He basically called out Matt DiBenedetto, and basically Matt knew that he was going to be leaving the team. He basically had wrote a sob story. Matt had basically kind of called out Team Penske in a video, and then of course it's unclear where Matt DiBenedetto is going to go next year. I really don't have a clue where he's going to go, and I think a lot of it is because the sponsorship and funding. We don't know what's going on with the sponsorship, and we don't know what's going on with the funding for Matt DiBenedetto going into next year. We're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. But hopefully things will come out very soon for Matt DiBenedetto, and we'll hear with some news in regards to that soon. So, anyway, that is it for today's NASCAR Silly Season update. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel notifications so you notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support page as well. Let's get your below for that and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about all of 2021 to 2022 season? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.